Hi, we're here today with our newest Arizona drag racing legend, Gary Thompson. And Gary is a long-time face in the crowd that's driven a lot of cool cars and done a lot of cool things. And one of our guys that we all grew up watching racing and racing with and had a good time. So Gary, how long you lived in Arizona?
I actually moved to Arizona the first time at 63.
What was that? Were you brought out here?
My dad got transferred on his job. I was going into my senior year of high school, so I actually went to Chandler High School 1 year.
So you became a native Chandler that year.
I did.
And then you said that your first time, so you.
Yeah, I've been back to California since then for a couple of years, but I came back the last time in 1970, I should say, and I've been in Arizona ever since, except for a 2-year hiatus. I worked in Rhode Island for a couple of years, about 10 years ago, and just got an opportunity to go out there, and it was kind of a lark for me and my wife, and just go out and see the country. We'd never been there before. So I spent 2 years out there and working, but traveling around.
Sounds awesome. When did you first feel the need for speed?
I went to my first drag race, I think, when I was about 14 years old in California. I went to Raisin City, outside of Fresno. I went to a race there, and then I went to Beeline. We moved to Arizona, and I went to Beeline. And then in 1965, I started racing my street car. A guy by the name of Ken Swanson and I would go to Beeline and race. And later that year, we met Jim West. And then we'd go with Jim and Johnny and Ken and myself, and we'd go out, and Jim had a 32 Ford, and we would tow that out with my car and race that car. And we did that for a couple of years before we all kind of moved away and started doing other things for a little while. In about 72, Jim called me one night, and he says, "Hey," he said, "this guy he's talked to me about driving his little 6-cylinder dragster." He said, "He lives right over by you." He said, "We're supposed to meet on Sunday." He said, "Why don't you meet us over there?" I said, "Okay." So I went over and met him, and we took the car out to a side street and made a couple of little short runs with it, and went back to Bob Bayless's house. And Bob told me, he said, "Hey," I could sure use some help. He said, "You live close." He said, "If you wouldn't mind," he said, "come over and help me." I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And that's kind of how I got into that. And Jim drove the car for a little while, and he had his own dragster too, but it wasn't running. He got it running, and then John started driving the dragster, and they broke it. And Bob didn't have the money to put it back together.
The West broke the car.
Yeah, I know it's hard to believe, but anyway, I fronted the money to put the car back together, but I got to drive it, and so that's how I got into the dragster.
So your first open wheel ride was in that dragster?
Yeah, it was a front motored 6-cylinder dragster, and I can still remember the very first pass. Bob told me, he says, "Just don't try to do a burnout or nothing. Just drive around the water and go out there and stage it and go down as long as you're comfortable." He said, if you don't think you're comfortable, shut it off. So I went out and staged it, and I left the line, and I could see the tires spinning, and I was looking at it going, "Wow, that's really cool." I'd never seen that before. And I looked up, and I'm almost at the finish line, it seemed like, and I hadn't even shifted out of low gear yet. And I reached over, hit the shifter, and it went into high gear, and I ran it all the way through. And Bob come down, and he goes, "I thought you were going to shut it off." I said, "You told me to drive it as long as I was comfortable." He goes, "You're comfortable?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Let's go racing."
That was back for the long drawn out process of license runs and checkout passes.
Not in those days.
No, you just got in the car and
my next pass, it was competition.
So you raced with Bob for
3 years.
3 years, and was it just that one car? Did you guys?
No, we got a sponsorship actually from Sambo's, and it was pretty good money actually for a comp car.
So Sambo's, for people who don't know, that was
a restaurant.
It was like a Jerry's or a Denny's.
Yeah, and we bought a rear engine dragster, and got that. And actually, we held the AHRA national record for degas dragster for a long time. And the record was like 989, and the car run consistent 9.0s. So we always qualified, like in '75, we qualified #1 at every race we went to. And to include like Orange County and stuff like that.
Where was so you raced, the tracks you raced at would have been Beeline?
Beeline, Tucson, we went to Orange County, we went to El Paso, Winslow, San Manuel, some of the bigger tracks,
Yeah, all the top 10 tracks.
Yeah.
So when you went to California, you had a good time racing against those guys, had a good time
yeah.
taking their money if you could?
Well, we only went there one time, and we made a qualifying pass, and if I remember right, it ran like a 906 or something like that. And like I said, we were #1 qualifier, and then it rained. So on Sunday, when we were supposed to race, they had all the top fuelers qualifying, and our first pass was 9 o'clock Sunday night, and the dew was already on the track. And first pass blew the sprag in the transmission. We just put it on the trailer and came home.
But you went. You had a good time.
Oh yeah, that was the fun days. We had a lot of fun in those days.
They say the shiny side was still up. So.
Oh yeah.
So you raced the 6-cylinder, and
let's see, that was in '76. We actually sold that car, and long story short, in '77 I started racing with Jim West. And it was Jim and Johnny and I, we always all hung around together anyway. And I started going to Chandler all the time because I was living in Phoenix at the time. And I'd drive down to Chandler and work on the car. And I usually spent the weekends at Jim's house because he didn't want to go home because we were partying and working on the cars and racing. And Jim, Tanis, and I, and Mike Pruitt, we all traveled around different tracks and stuff running the car. And he had a Vega. We sold the Vega, and actually we traded it, and we bought a Monza. And it was the old Beachcomber car. And Jim had a Rodak motor that was in it, and ran that car, and then we got the opportunity to go to Australia. And we took that car down there, and John brought his motor, so the three of us went down there and ran that car. Well, the last run of the fourth race, Jim put the car over the guardrail and pretty much killed it. And so brought it back, and John front half the car, and we put a fuel altered body on it, and I had an iron Chevrolet motor that I put in it, and we ran that for a couple 3 years. And then Kim Bright come up to me one time and said, "Hey, why don't you put a funny car body on this thing?" I said, "Because I don't have the money." And he goes, he said, "I'll buy the body." I said, "Sounds good to me." So he bought a body, and then John helped us put the tin work in it, and we started running funny car. And John helped me get a lot of match races, and John's always helped me out a lot.
When were you driving the car?
Yeah, I was driving the car then. Yeah, after we got back from Australia and got put my motor in it and the fuel altered, then I started driving it, and then got into the funny car, and we ran the iron motor for a while, and then in '83 when they were getting ready to open up out here, I thought, this isn't gonna do, hometown track and all that kind of stuff. So I took all my Chevrolet parts and sold it, and I bought a motor from Amos Satterley. And Amos said, "I'll tune it for you." So that's how we got into that deal. So then it was Tony Almada, Anthony Almada, Kim Bright, Mike Lou, myself, and Amos Satterley.
So the car's name was the car originally called the?
Well, when I did the fuel altered thing, I called it Prime Rate because working for the bank, the big deal at the time is everything was based off of Prime Rate, and I thought it was kind of a cool name for the car, Charlie Allen didn't think so, but I didn't care.
I had a brother-in-law that managed First Federal Savings, and he raced sprint buggies at Manzanita, and they didn't like it because he wanted his number to be 8.75%.
Yeah.
They didn't quite get the connotation of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, the banking thing. So you worked at Valley National Bank.
Valley National Bank, and then Bank One, and
Bank One.
Chase.
You went through the
Retired.
changes.
Yeah, I retired at Chase, 38 years.
The during this time that you're a drag racer, you're passionate about it. You made a lot of friends, and they all of a sudden know that, hey, this guy can loan us money.
Yes,
It's like
happy days.
it's like they wanted checks from you, but you could you arranged so they figured out ways to.
I made a few pool loans that went for race cars, motors, and stuff like that.
Well, home improvement stuff. I think.
Oh yeah,
I think if you actually look at the heritage and lineage of some of the cars I've had along the ways, they might have been creatively financed the same way. So
correct.
yeah, I think that's just a path we take. But so you're enjoying the prime rate car, and then you teamed together with Anthony and
Yes, and Checker Auto at that time kind of stepped up and put their name on the car, and we started running the car. And Checker never really gave us money, but they would buy us bits and pieces once in a while. If we'd break something, they'd buy it, and or if we told them, well, hey, we need a bigger blower, and part of that was I'd say, Amos Satterley thinks we need a bigger blower. And they go, oh, okay, so they'd buy us a bigger blower or whatever. And we did okay with that car. In '84 was the last year we ran it, and we went to a lot of races. And I don't know. Tony said it was like 26 races. I don't know if we went to that many or not, but we went to quite a few. But we did Midland, Odessa, El Paso, Vegas, Carlsbad, Orange County. Not in '84. We didn't do Orange County. Of course, Firebird, Tucson. We set 4 track records that year on some of those crummy tracks, Midland, Odessa, El Paso. We set the track record twice, one night in Las Vegas, one weekend, I should say. And then my last hurrah was out at Firebird out here, and I was racing the Hawaiian Punch on a match race, and I won one, and he won one, and Amos come up to me and he goes, hey, he says, he's really gunning for you because you're making him look bad. He said, what do you got in the tank? I said, 90. And he says, bump it 2%. So I bumped it, and I mixed it up, poured it in. He goes, what do you got in there? I said, well, I checked it. It's about 92.5. He says, put 3 more nuts on the clutch and let's go out and run it. And we went out and ran it. In the car, I staged it up, nailed it out of the lights, and the car pulled the front end and carried it all the way through low gear, set it down, and it had never pulled hard like that did in high gear. And it ran a 590, which was a track record. And that was my fastest ever.
that was pretty respectable.
Yeah.
Definitely very respectable pass. I mean, with the famous Amos tune in it.
Yep, it was. And Amos was just tremendous. I mean, we didn't hardly hurt too much the whole year. I think we burned 5 pistons, killed a couple of blowers and a crank or something, a head. But mostly the car was just, we would go out and run three runs with it and not even pull the head, just change the oil and tune it up and, check the valves and adjust the clutch and go back and run it again.
It's a bracket car.
Old time drag racing, not like what they do now.
Yeah, that some will dispute that, who really had the most fun, and I think back in those days, if you really look at it, it was more of a lifestyle, having fun with it.
I can tell you that racing with the Chandler group, and we'd go out to the track with, everybody knows John Allman. We'd go out to Beeline, and there's been more than one time that we've left Beeline. It was already daylight, and just partying all night. And all of us, all the Chandler group, as we call it, just all hanging together and partying, and we could have a party at the drop of a hat.
I remember many of those Chandler Group events out there, and that was before Red Solo Cups.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's how.
We had Miller light cans.
Yes, you did.
And Jack Daniels.
Yeah, dangerous, but we had a good time. So in '84 was your last.
Yes, I sold the car to Paul Blackford and George Keeson, and they bought it. Neither one of them drove. They asked me, if I'd make a couple laps in it to get it worked out, and I did. and they never went back with the car after that. I don't know what happened, but they had a Peter Piper sponsorship.
They were local here.
Yes.
Did you ever track whatever any of your old cars where they are, or is?
Last time I talked to George was out at Beeline one time, and he said that the car went down to Tucson somewhere, and somebody ran it as a Econo car.
Okay.
So that's the last I heard of it.
So you're finished fuel racing and drag racing, but you still have a passion for cars. Have you had any toys along the way? Like, what do you do to?
Yeah, I've got a '34 Chevy that I've had for 30 years, and built it. It's got a 502 in it, big block, and I put around in that once in a while. But my brother-in-law and I, my brother-in-law's an old drag racer too from Texas, and we built I don't know 5 or 6 cars: a 32 Ford, a 53 Chevy truck, a 64 Chevelle, 57 Chevy. And we're working on a 66 Nova right now that we're finishing up. So we've got several cars that we've had our hands on that we just piddle.
And work to the bank.
Well, I quit the bank a long time ago.
When did you retire from?
I retired from Chase in 2008. And like I said, we went to Rhode Island for 2 years, and I actually retired in 2011.
Retired.
Retired.
You've enjoyed it ever since?
Oh, yeah.
So along the way, as we all have those, interactions with people, who was your favorite drag racer? If you watched them, and that was who you remember? Do you have a guy that would say was one of your top, drag racers to watch? That you always.
Well, I'm a big John West fan. John's always helped me out. We've raced together, we've raced against each other. But as far as I admire John Force, Kenny Bernstein, Don Perdome, Don Garlich. I mean, those guys are, you have to admire all of them for what they've done. I'm not a Don Schumacher fan at all, but I like some of his drivers.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So it's kind of like a Coke and Pepsi thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, back when we grew up in Phoenix when we were young, we used to be Criz or Crux.
Yeah, exactly.
You had one, you couldn't listen to both of them, but
yeah.
When you raced out of town, did you have a chance to race the Eloy track? The one famed race at Eloy.
We were there.
Okay.
Jim was driving. We were there.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I got the opportunity. I got to race Perdome, Bernstein, McEwen. Jim Dunn, Frank Hawley, Don Perdome, just a lot of the big name people, and I can say that I at least got to race against them. The outcome mostly was in their favor, but I did beat Force one time, and I beat McEwen a couple of times. So.
Those are things to remember. McEwen was a great guy.
Yeah.
Forrest, of course, kind of blue collar, self-made.
Yep.
And back in those days, though, when I think it was still considered one of the leaker cars, and just started to come out of the leaker mentality to the show car. But he was always fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
And you put on a great show.
Hey, in '84, he hadn't even won a race yet, but I can tell you, he was hard to beat. It was for me anyway.
Well. But you put up a good fight too, because I remember being a lot of those places at races where you said, and you were always in contention. It looks like you guys were having a great time. Anything you miss about the drag racing part of it?
I miss the competition of it. So other than when I stepped away, I completely stepped away because I knew if I went back and piddled around, I'd be out there spending money on it. And I was at that time I was 40 years old, and I decided, I'm going to want to retire here one of these days, so I better start putting some money away, and that's really what I worked on.
So that worked out pretty well for you. You had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
did a lot of great things. Met a lot of great people along the way. Your stories are awesome, and we really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.
The important part about being a drag racing legend is that people recognize you for what you've done in your importance along the way. Everybody has done something to help develop racing in Arizona, and that's what we're focusing on really is our Arizona Drag Racing Legends, which made it fun and where we are today, and you were a big part of it. And
No, thank you.
we want to congratulate you and thank you for being here in true Arizona Drag Racing Legend. Thank you,
Thank
Gary
you.
Thompson.
Thank you.